Let me tell you an interesting story, the story of the Columbian Exchange. When the Europeans moved to colonize North America, they brought along several diseases that would kill a large portion of the local population in North American societies. The Europeans who brought the diseases had themselves acquired immunity over such diseases due to a long history of exposure. This revealed one thing: one set of the human population may be immune to a virus, while the other set of human population remains extremely vulnerable. And China is now falling into vulnerability to COVID 19 due to its zero COVID strategy. Hi, and welcome to TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I am your host Sanbir, and in this video I will tell you how China's zero COVID policy could end up wiping out a large portion of China's population. Let's begin. When the COVID-19 pandemic kicked off in March 2020, all countries had more or less a similar policy: enforcement of big lockdowns and aggressive containment measures to buy time for vaccine rollouts and ramping up healthcare facilities. Some countries like New Zealand even achieved zero COVID. But as the pandemic continued, almost all countries decided to open up, learn to live with COVID 19, and build up immunity amongst the citizens. However, there is only one country that continues to follow the zero COVID strategy, and that is China. The country has continued its tight lockdowns and containment measures. Effectively, this has left large swathes of the Chinese population unexposed to the virus and its emerging variants. Substandard Chinese vaccines haven't helped the Chinese acquire sufficient immunity either, and this means that a single big COVID 19 wave could wipe out a major portion of the Chinese population. For more than 20 months, China has stayed deeply obsessed with its containment policy that is described as a zero COVID strategy. Stringent containment measures and draconian lockdowns is what defines the strategy. In June 2020, when a single new case was confirmed in Beijing, authorities moved quickly, identified the point of origin, sealed high-risk neighborhoods, and launched a mass testing campaign. This is the standard operating procedure in China now. A single case leads to tight containment measures. In extreme cases like the Xi'an outbreak last year, authorities locked down millions of citizens to avoid more infections. The Chinese Communist Party claims it has prevented millions of deaths, but the reality is quite different. The zero COVID strategy and keeping people unexposed to the virus hasn't actually helped China achieve anything. According to findings made by George Calhoun, who is the director of the Quantitative Finance Program at Stevens Institute of Technology, the Chinese regime has likely understated the COVID 19 death rate by as much as 17,000% in a systemic data suppression campaign aimed at sustaining its political image across the world. The official COVID 19 death count, which the Chinese regime has put out, is 4,636. But according to recent findings quoted by the Epoch Times, the number of COVID 19 deaths in China are numbered at around 1.7 million, which is a whopping 366 times higher than the official figure. Millions in China have died despite the zero COVID strategy. Yet, there is a bigger catastrophe knocking on China's doors: the big immunity gap. The US's Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC, recently revealed that natural immunity proved to be more potent than vaccines during the Delta wave in the US. By the week of October 3rd, case rates were around 6 times lower in California amongst people with vaccination and no prior COVID than those who neither had vaccination nor prior COVID. But the case rates were even lower among people with prior COVID and no vaccination. In California, such people had around 29 times lesser COVID rate than those who were neither vaccinated nor exposed to the virus in the past. Those who had the vaccination as well as exposure have the highest level of protection against COVID 19. China, however, lived under a zero COVID strategy, and therefore most people in China haven't developed natural immunity against the virus. And then, the Chinese don't have vaccine-induced immunity either. Chinese vaccines have proven grossly ineffective in different parts of the world. The CCP itself does not promote vaccine use amongst the elderly. You end up at a stage where the Chinese simply lack built-up immunity. Today, the Chinese people are more susceptible to COVID 19 than any other population on the planet. In fact, no more than a small fraction of 1% of the Chinese population possesses natural immunity against the virus. By contrast, 67% of India's population is said to have got exposed to the virus and carried antibodies well ahead of the Omicron surge. People across the world have learned how to live with COVID 19, but China evidently has not. This means that as and when China opens up its society, it will have to face a constantly mutating virus without any real protection, natural or vaccine induced. The world is coming out of the pandemic, but China is waiting for a COVID 19 tsunami that could wipe out a large portion of its population.